All right, we're live. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this summer LinkedIn Live Thinking Outside the Box. Trust, relationship building, and maximizing investments. These are critical themes for event marketers and for trade show exhibitors in particular this year. And we've been talking with the experts at Exhibitus all about it recently. And today we thought we'd invite practitioners to a discussion about how they are carving out moments beyond the expo show floor, the expo and show floor for connection and amplification. Really, it's about that relationship building and how we're leaning into experiential to do it. I am so thrilled to have with us here today, Katie Black, U.S. Experiential Marketing Lead at Square. Hey, Katie. Emmy Rutti, Manager, Brand Identity and Design at WorkLeap. Hey, Emmy.
Hey.
Along with Louise LaRouge, Manager of Events and Sponsorships at WorkLeap. And hello. And Matt Beck, Executive Vice President of Creative at Exhibitus. Hey, Matt.
Hello.
All right, so let's get into it. And I'd like to start on the brand side and hear from Katie, Emmy, and Louise about how you're going beyond the booth. But how are you thinking about it strategically? Set the stage for where you think your exhibit programs are today and why it matters to think beyond that footprint. Who'd like to kick us off? Katie?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I think before we start thinking about all the different ways that we can kind of expand our presence, it really is on a show by show basis. So especially for Square, we're at upwards of 30 trade shows throughout the year with different audiences at each event. So some of them are more broad, where we have, all business sizes from SMB to enterprise, and some that are just super niche enterprise events, and then different verticals within that. So really focusing on which show, and then that kind of drives the strategy as far as how we activate potentially off-site or which shows we even decide to do that. And we also have a tiering system. So for our tier 1 events, that's really where we kind of go big and do a lot surrounding the show. And then we kind of take it on a case-by-case basis for tier 2 and tier 3. But I would say for our broader shows and our tier 1 events, I really like to work closely with my media partner and kind of do some strategic media in the cities that the events are taking place. This could be takeovers at the airport. We did something fun in Vegas, which was like really lo-fi, just stickers on the sidewalk with our booth number around the expo center. We got in trouble for that in Chicago, so check with your convention centers. We also did like wrapped pedicabs that were taking people to and from the show site because traffic was so bad. So just different fun ways to kind of activate in the city itself and make it feel really local, and also helpful to the attendees. And then of course, different kind of ancillary events, offsite events, that might be kind of, bigger or through the show as far as like an industry, event sponsorship or something that's, Square owned, smaller, more niche, kind of upscale if it's an enterprise audience. So it kind of runs the gamut and depends on what show and what audience we're targeting.
Yeah. Yeah. And Emmy and Louise, does that resonate with you?
Yeah. Of course, our audience is a little bit different. Like our audience is always the same for in our event. Like we're gonna talk to always to the IT people or it can be IT pros, ICs or leadership people, but it's always kind of the same target we talk to. So we aim to also drive our strategy in the booth and in the experience of the trade show itself. It will be more around like the pain of the audience and like shape our experience around it and also like make sure we're specific enough and like insightful enough for them to bring back memory of ShareGate or WorkLeap. ShareGate is another product at our company, so we work more on that. But it's more a matter of like making sure we were insightful for them, and like we build the we shape the strategy around it and the experience as well. So depending on what medium could all fit, we're gonna adapt.
Yeah.
Yeah. For us, that's also okay to not do beyond the expo, beyond the show floor experience. Sometimes it's so noisy that we will really focus on experience at the booth that has to be perfect before even thinking about doing something outside. So yeah, activation is an amazing way to attract people, but also it could distract people from what we are trying to convey. And what we really, really want people to understand when they are coming at the booth is like, we are here to help. Like, show me your challenges. We will try to find a solution with you. So yeah, we are doing activation when it's really, really worth it. And it's going to be like private meeting, a private conversation. We will not be the center of the attention. It's the focus will be on them.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that, you have to take a measured approach and always make it right for the brand and what your objectives are. And to your point, Workly, if it's an opportunity to get closer and more intimate outside of that booth experience. And Katie, it's a little bit about, hey, we're here. Let's be loud and proud and make sure people know we're here. Kind of two different strategies on just exposure and connection. And I like the idea that you get to be involved in the sort of the campaign strategy. To your point, Katie, working with media on that. And Matt, from the partner perspective, how does this impact the strategy process from your side and the planning process, and how your team looks at a client's objectives and the program around the show, and what is you're thinking about it?
So we noticed this evolution several years ago, right? And even prior to 2020, it seemed like a lot of our partners were looking for more curated experiences outside of the individual events. And so we started evolving our talk track pretty aggressively into something where we're no longer curating a one-off experience or even a series of one-off experiences at trade shows or conferences, but it's more about addressing business objectives and having a laser focus on the end user audience, right? Because we know a lot more than everybody else about and by we I mean those on the call and people that are hyper curious about audiences and psychology and how to curate experiences that resonate with them, that people, when they feel something, kind of like the Maya Angelou quote, when they feel something they remember it more. And we want brands to be felt rather than just interacted with or have these what I would say maybe 10 or 20 years ago at trade shows, it was a lot more transactional at these trade shows. It was more about product demonstration versus connection. So when we're thinking about this larger ecosystem, we're thinking about these pre-show campaigns, executive dinners, as Louise mentioned, customer meetings, also digital engagement, social media content, and all the follow-ups that come with that. So it's a much more sophisticated approach, that the way we're looking at the strategy, and it starts earlier. We start asking questions like, who are we trying to influence? That's the audience piece. I mentioned think, feel, and do. We articulate a lot of our events through that lens of what do you want them to think, or what have they thought before, and how do you want to shift that, and how do you want them to feel, and ultimately, what do you want them to do? And what role does each one of these touch points play in this brand journey? Which, of course, is a much different conversation than how many demo stations do you need, or how big's your storage room, or my favorite is it going to have double pad under the carpet, which is something that event managers ask all the time because their feet hurt after the event, right? So, so when we get that strategy right, the environment almost designs itself because we all stack hands and align on a decision, every decision that has a purpose through that strategy.
Yeah. So to your point, it's a big shift in thinking. And so I'm curious about how you all have been able to sort of share this vision and some of these ideas with internal stakeholders. So sales, product leadership, how you get everybody aligned around an experiential vision that goes beyond sort of the traditional booth. Any insight on that? Katie, I'm happy to circle back to you.
Yeah. And to touch on what Matt was saying, like +1, I think, trade shows of yore, it was really just the show itself and your focus on lead generation. But especially with these larger shows or your tier 1 events, like we do truly as like a full funnel experience. So there's certain things you're activating for brand awareness, and there's certain things you're doing for consideration, for lead drive, and then like post-event follow-up. So it's like a full funnel experience. So totally agree with that. And as far as getting leadership, I actually think the funnel piece is important because you're showing that certain things you're doing aren't for every part of the funnel. So like we are not doing, branded pedicabs for conversion, or, like you have to show them the way that you're treating these events, and those more experiential moments are like top of funnel, making sure people are aware that you're even at the show. People don't know you're at the show. They're not going to come to your booth, which is this thing that you just spent all this time and money on, right? It's like they have to know that you're at the event. And so to be able to show that different things that you're doing for your activation hit different KPIs that you're aiming for, whether you're measuring booth impressions or engagements, or, if it's for the pedicabs, like, for example, number of riders or things like that, that you can show different KPIs attached to those different pieces. I think that's important. I also think it's, especially if it's events that you've done in the past or similar events, looking at key learnings and being like, hey, we noticed that in the past this thing lacked, and we think this is going to help bridge that gap. So for us, it was like the reason why we were activating so much out in front of the convention center is we knew that our competitors had a booth space closer to the door, and we needed to find ways to get our branding in front of them when people were getting into the show hall. And that is why we were activating escalator clings, gorilla stickers outside, because we were like, where can we get in front of them, right? We don't want to be behind the 8 ball when people are even getting into the exhibit floor. So those are different things, is like strategically thinking about, okay, what is the issue at hand? And that's why these things are going to help us combat that issue. And that can kind of help them understand versus just being like, we're putting stickers outside the convention center. They're like, okay, how is that driving lead, or how are you measuring, And so I think it's really being able to kind of tie it to a problem and then show what you're measuring from that.
Totally. And we'll get into another one of the ideas to that end that you've executed in just a moment.
Yeah.
Louise and Emmy, does that,
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
For us, the strategy is like we sit everyone in a room, not really in a room, but in front of the screen, and we align, and that's okay for us to build a hierarchy. Like everyone will arrive with their own goal, their own target. And depending on the event, we will say, okay, today we are focusing on customers. This is the main focus of this event. So every strategy that you have in mind has to serve this goal. Of course, we will have like targets that are not like the main one, but we are working on a strategy. So, and I totally agree with Katie. It has to be from the moment that they heard about the event to the end. And we want them to be involved in the brand, to see the brand, to live the brand, and to make sure that it makes sense. So yeah, for us, it's going to be like optimizing everything, and then the design will follow. Will flow. The experience will follow.
Right. Yeah. And this all, I think, works nicely towards this next question. And, Matt, I know Exhibitus is really passionate about this story before structure approach. And I think this maps back to what we're talking about building a campaign and understanding the pain points, understanding the why, and being able to sort of connect the dots and tell the story about, what does that mean to sort of lead with narrative in a trade show context? How does that change the brief? And how does that help achieve these experiential goals that
Well, this was born out of seeing a lot of this tactically driven strategy that we had seen in the days of yore, as Katie mentioned. It was, we had a lot of partners coming to us and saying, hey, I saw so-and-so had a Jumbotron, we want to have a Jumbotron. And it was always kind of a sticking point for us. It was like, we asked the question, what do you want to say on it? And a lot of times you got kind of a blank look. And we have worked with many partners who already have a great story, but they need our help articulating that. in this really interesting medium that we all work in. And then you have some that don't even understand what we mean by trying to tell a story about their product. What we do really proactively is sit down and think about it through the lens of the audience. And typically, not always, but you have kind of three tiers of audiences that are coming, just as an example, to any event. And we like to articulate that in almost written prose, how someone is experiencing that event, where they're coming from, what's their expertise, why are they even there, right? Because if you don't know the why, you can't address that for them. So if we write that out uh, like a story, from when they get off the plane and what's their motivation, then you can start to build the stage around it for the brand, right? So then the technology supports the story, the graphics support the story, staffing supports the story. I want to riff off of something Katie mentioned before about all these different interests. They don't have to be competing if you have a North Star. And if you develop a story that everybody stacks hands on, and you ask yourself the question, every decision you're making, does it refer to that North Star? And if the answer is no, you don't do it. Like right now, we're working on a project where we ask ourselves at every moment, is this the conventional approach? And if the answer is yes, then we don't do it. Right. And that's a kind of a microcosm. It's hyper simplifying how challenging that can be to get everybody to stack hands. Everybody travels. You can't get access to the CMO. The product manager is sort of taking control and driving every single decision. Meanwhile, the CMO hops in and is like, this is not the direction at all. Very common issue, right? So we need that alignment, and in telling the stories through the audience's lens and getting everybody on board with that, that makes every decision going forward a lot easier.
Yeah. Let's turn to some of the good ideas that you've executed recently. And Katie, I know Square recently did a Doors Open activation at the National Restaurant Association show. Talk a little bit about that, how that sort of feeds into sort of your overall strategy and what worked particularly well about it. And it was a lot of fun. Put that.
It was a lot of fun. I think before I go into what the activation was, I think it's really important and key to become good partners with your show organizers. That is how you can kind of unlock these interesting sponsorships, which might not exist. And I'm grateful to my partner, Lydia from Winsight, who I've worked with for a decade now on this show and various other shows. But we got to a point where I wanted to do something different and fun. And to, like I was mentioning, we were really trying to activate kind of like that grand concourse front of the exhibit area, and just try to think through different ways to do that. And she was like, well, on the first day of the event, it's kind of like Coachella. We have this captive audience. They're just sitting outside waiting for the doors open. Then 9 a.m. starts and they go in. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And she sent me a picture of everyone out there. And she's like, listen, like I can create a sponsorship. We'll call it the Surprise and Delight sponsorship. And there's just a couple caveats. You can't build anything. It has to be mobile. And it needs to take place within like the 20-minute window that people are waiting outside. And so we went back with my agency partners and kind of thought through what that would entail and what kind of pieces we needed to make sure that it actually had impact. A lot of the ideas that were originally brought to the table were too small. It didn't feel like they were actually going to drive kind of the visual and auditory impact that we wanted. So we knew it had to have something auditory sound. It was this big crowd. We needed everyone to kind of look in the same direction. And we knew it needed to be visual. We needed people to actually be able to see it in a crowd looking up or towards something, and then mobile. So the first year we did it was 2025, and we had like a flash mob style marching band come out of the crowd, and they did a performance, and then they walked everyone to the Square booth and did a performance in front of our booth, which was really fun. And everyone was like, what is this? It had never been done before. And then this year it was really fun. We kind of got to build on that. We worked with a local Chicago-based skate group that came out and did a kind of skate performance with a DJ. And then we threw little mini parachutes from the ceiling with gift cards to Square restaurants in the area. And then we had the skate group come to the booth and do a performance. And so it's just been so fun to weave in like the local culture, and to also, what I love about it is adding value to the actual event itself. Like now it's something that every year people are wanting to get there early to see what is going to be the kind of surprise that year. So that's been really, really fun. And like I said, it was all about like, how can we get people's attention? How can we do something that feels like square? The energy, the momentum was really great, positive brand association, and then traffic to the booth. So it was a win-win.
Yeah. Love that. Louise and Emmy, talk about some of the things that you've done experience-wise outside the booth that have been working well.
Yeah. Yeah, what Katie said makes me think about something we did like a couple years ago. It was our second visit to this event in Toronto called Collision. It was we were like we just rebranded, and we wanted people to make sure they know we're there and that we have something to say and something to help them work better. And we were trying to say the obvious and like say the ugly truth and make sure people resonate with that. And we were thinking of a way like, okay, it's cool to put it on our booth and like making sure people see it, but how can we make sure people see it anywhere in the conference center and like really resonate with what we have to say? And like we thought about like mimicking our the dude with sign. It was really popular in that year. So we could take someone who looked like him and like stand in front of the booth with a cardboard. But I said to my colleague in that day, I was like, what if we ask him to be there? And it really resonates with what the concept we wanted to do, because he was stating the truth and like making real thing in front of everyone. So we asked him and he said yes. And we had the dude with sign all over Collision Conference Center, standing with a GSOF. We were GSOF at the time, but GSOF shirt, and like having our different liners that we thought resonate with really well with the HR audience, because we have an HR product. So and it really worked, because everybody on LinkedIn was like, oh, this is exactly it, this is what I'm feeling at work. And they did it. And the year after, we saw some people with the shirt of dude with sign, but with their slogan on their tagline on the cardboard. But it was really funny, and it worked. It was a really fun idea. And yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And if I may, of course, we have to have a budget to do that. But maybe if like a brand with less budget than us is asking how we can resonate outside the booth, for me, the swag, it's an amazing opportunity. Like, we will always think the swag that we give at the booth as an object that people will keep on their desk, for example, or like close to them. So I feel the swag has to be super intentional as well. So right now we have a product for the last one that we did. We have a product about oversharing, AI governance, things like that. So it's only a cup with the tagline, "Don't overshare before it's a mug. Don't overshare before my coffee." It's like, it's fun, it resonates, it talks about our product. So for me, yeah, the swag has to be super intentional. It's not has to be very, very expensive, but it's a great way as well.
Yeah, I love that. And Matt, any good ideas that you've seen out there, yours or others?
Well, I mean, a couple come to mind that seem sort of like unstrategic, but they actually had impact beyond what we thought they would, quite literally. I mean, there's a couple instances where We had a booth experience that was inspired by a ski chalet, and we had smoke coming out of the chimney, and of course it's vapor, right? Not real smoke. And it was spreading throughout the show hall, and of course the show association was all paranoid and scared, but then everybody was like, oh, we know who that is. And so it became this kind of like much more amplified, memorable because of a different reason kind of experience. And we actually instigated a new rule for that show, which I'm kind of proud of, weirdly. Another instance of that that we had done is years ago for National Retail Federation show. It's actually at Exhibitus, where you're going to be soon, Rachel. We had done some graffiti art that was inspired by the campaign for Toshiba. It was Moments of Enlightenment, and it was a Satori symbol. If anybody knows what that is, it's like a swirl of paint. And so we used some guerrilla marketing, and similar to one of the examples that was mentioned before, kind of put that throughout the city as sort of something that was noticeable, but people didn't know exactly what it was until they were confronted with the climax of the experience, which was at the Javits Center. So couple cool examples. Another one was one year we had a last minute decision. We put a bubble machine in the booth, and the bubbles were going everywhere. And it was like we spent all this time and energy into the strategy, hyper sophisticated talk tracks and everything, and everyone just remembered the bubbles. So you never know.
Yeah. And a lot of these ideas, I think, too, when we think of sort of consumer experiential stuff that's built for social shareability, how are you measuring how some of these are landing? The skate crew coming through, Katie, for example, and how do you sort of map back those into sort of the specific goals that you had for the show?
Yeah, for that one specifically, we would use like a beacon or mesh in our booth, and you can track like increased impressions or engagements during the hours that took place. So that was something good. But to your point, I think what's been interesting is like the rise of LinkedIn and content being shared on LinkedIn. And we saw our activation being shared on like the show's Instagram or LinkedIn, and a bunch of other people that had been at the events LinkedIn. And we also had influencers attend on behalf of Square, and we timed their appearance to be during the Surprise and Delight. So we got a lot of social amplification through that. Local Chicago-based like F&B influencers. So it was very targeted that the content that they were getting would likely be seen by F&B operators as well. So we did plan it with social in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Final question here before we wrap up. I'd love to hear about trends, things that you're seeing in the consumer experiential world that you would happily bring over into your work, or maybe you already have. And what would they be? Bubbles come to mind.
See, they're memorable.
Emmy?
Yeah, we visited the hotel and venues for an event we want to host in Nashville this week. So there was a lot of sensory aspect of the visit and the experience we on the venue we visited. So this is something I really liked about like B2C stores or like hotels, where they tend to be really mindful of the details and all the sensory. So smell, like feeling, touching, like different textures and everything. So this is something I like to bring in our booth experience as well. So make sure the environment is calm, or the music is not too loud, or there's space where you can rest in that busyness of the conference center. But something that I really want to try is like maybe develop a share gate or a working smell, and like when people visit the booth, they know and they can remember. We all have like memory about a scent, so this is something that could be fun and really new maybe.
I mean, we've done this, and by the way,
Yeah.
that's like a design project on its own. because everybody has
yeah.
like a
Oh
subjective
my God.
opinion of what things
Oh
smell
my
like.
God. I can imagine.
Worth it though. We're totally worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else before you wrap up?
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna be very basic, I think, but for the longest time, I was anti-screen, anti-demo. We are doing events in a very like IT world, too much screens, too much noise. So I was anti-screen, and I do realize that I was wrong. People need to see the product, need to touch the demo. So yeah, for us, unfortunately, we have to think the experience of the screen to be like not too big, not too huge, not taking too much part of the conversation. But I have to say that I'm bringing a demo back to the booth. So what we designed with Exhibitus at our last major event is like demo station feel like almost like a museum station, very, very well designed, very intentional, small. I arrived at the event. I was like, oh no, it has to be much smaller. So we had to rebuy screens to make it work. But yeah, so yeah, I'm very basic. Yes. But let's talk about the smell, Amy. Maybe in a breath later
I
today.
was going to say, I'm bringing demos back would be a great t-shirt. So
Bring the demos back. That's great.
Love it.
Katie.
I would just say, as far as bringing kind of the consumer component into B2B, it's not a specific thing, but it's just joy and fun. I think so much around B2B is thought to be, very like, the messaging, it's like very product driven and things like that. And for me, it's like, even a trade show is a human experience, and they're going to know how they felt leaving your booth more than anything else. Like, they're going to remember that feeling. So if they had fun in your booth, then even if the demo or the, whatever, if it didn't feel as robust, they're still gonna be like, that was really fun. I had a really great conversation. Everyone was really nice. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I try to weave into. And I think too, a lot of our activations are for restaurant operators. So bringing in like hospitality is just so important. But for me, I mean, this is my original conversation with event marketer. I'm like, trade shows should be fun, and they can. So that's kind of the hill I die on.
Especially because, I mean, they should be still fearless, I think, in the B2B space. And I think that's what I would take from the B2C space, is to be more fearless and more emotional, be playful, right? Because B2B can seem so serious. And if you're playful in a sea of seriousness, then you're going to resonate, because people remember surprise, they remember humor, authenticity, emotion, everything we've been talking about. So I think, to sum up some of these things is that, we're not designing booth anymore, right? And I use booth intentionally like that, because it's much more about a business outcome. And we ask ourselves and our partners all the time, like, if this is a successful event or campaign, what happens next week? And then you're designing against outcomes versus that immediate need.
Yeah, I love that. Excellent. Well, I appreciate everyone's time. Thanks for joining. Thanks for the good t-shirt ideas. Katie, Emmy, Louise, and Matt. And again, thanks to our partners at Exhibitus for helping us keep these conversations going around this really important subject. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. Appreciate you. Take care.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Rachel.
Bye.